All right, we're going to give it just a moment, folks, just to make sure that we have a transmission here. All right, looks like we're live. All right, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, folks. This is Joe Imbriano, the Fullerton Informer, coming to you live from the sunny streets of Southern California on this Wednesday early evening edition. Today is August 16th, 2023. I want to thank you all for tuning in. This is going to be obviously a very important discussion. This is Joe Imbriano, the Fullerton Informer, P.O. Box 4121, Fullerton, California, 92834, and on the web at thefullertoninformer.com. WiFiDangers.com, VaxDangers.com, CellTowerDangers.com, JoeImbriano777 at gmail.com. And on it goes, folks. So, you know, I really had a hard time watching some of the aftermath footage of that area. I haven't been to Hawaii since our honeymoon 25 years ago. But I can tell you that the people in Hawaii are really just very blessed and fortunate to have had the ability to live and exist there. It's such a beautiful place. The weather's amazing. And it's been getting very expensive there. And it's really sad that in there, in my opinion, was an act of war against the residents of that community. I don't mind telling you that it's pretty easy to see what went down over there once you remove and extract yourself from the emotion that's associated with such a trauma and such a tragedy. You know, there's a ferry, a little boat that takes you 9 miles across the ocean to a private island. Well, it's almost a private island. 98% of the island called Lanai, that literally, and it's amazing how they don't show the footage showing that island. You know, when you're on the coast in Lahaina, looking at the ocean, that's pretty much all you can see is this big I think it's about 130 square mile island that just stares you in the face. And it's only 9 miles out. 98% of that island is owned by a guy that ran Oracle. He was a co-founder of Oracle, which is a software company. And I think the guy's last name is Ellison. Larry Ellison, I believe, owns 98% of the island 9 miles off the coast of Lahaina. That's where the ferry is. For $30, you can get a ride out to that island that is 2% still publicly available, but now the ferry's gone, right? So in the early stages of the fire in Lahaina, you could see the ring around Lahaina, almost like a laser had ignited a burn pattern around it. In addition, there are eyewitness accounts that when this fire started, that it was being taken under control by the residents, but the water got shut off. That's right, folks. Where the source of ignition was, the fire was being managed by the people, by the locals, and they were winning the battle, but the water got shut off. Now, this part of Maui, Lahaina, has a unique character to it. It's a simple town, a laid-back town, kind of a place where people have lived for generations and their families own property for generations, run the mom and pop shops, and you know, you could literally park your car and you're like right on the beach and overlooking the water, spend a few bucks and have a nice time and really just enjoy a laid-back Hawaii experience with one-story houses and, you know, little shops and a beach and places to walk around. And there are people that literally had their little houses right on the beach for a very long time. The properties were in the names of the families for generations. And you have people living in absolute paradise because their grandparents lived in paradise, because their great-grandparents were born there and whatever. And there was a move not too long ago that was instituted by Governor Green, who happened to have, strangely enough, been selected as they call it an election, but you can call it what you want. But the governor of Hawaii is from Pennsylvania. How'd that happen? How'd they get some guy from Pennsylvania to be the governor of Hawaii, of Maui, right? So the governor of Maui is this guy, I think his name is Jason Green, or Joshua Green or something. Point is the guy's from Pennsylvania. Now, I find it also interesting that the police chief of Maui happens to be the guy that was the incident commanding officer during the alleged Las Vegas shooting, where Stephen Paddock allegedly opened fire on a group of concert goers, resulting in the largest alleged mass shooting in U.S. history. So we have the incident commander from the Vegas shooting running the Maui Police Department. And then we've got this technology billionaire that bought 98% of the island that's 9 miles right off the coast of where this place got torched. In addition, Lahaina has an emergency alert system that is supposed to sound when either an impending tsunami or a hurricane or whatever is a threat to the residents. That didn't go off. Several months ago, Governor Green, the governor of Maui, had put together, through legislative enactment at the gubernatorial level, this broad brush development plan to quote unquote make affordable housing, right? Basically, when they talk about that stuff, folks, it's the government coming in and condemning your act. That 9 miles off the coast is a private island owned by a technology billionaire. And on this island of Lanai, that is 98% owned by the co-founder of Oracle, 9 miles off of Lahaina, 50 minutes by a boat ride, $30 can get the common man over to an island that is owned 98% by a billionaire. Do you not think there is some sort of intent to keep the common man off of that private island? Well, I can only imagine, you know, if I was that guy, I don't think I'd want people coming over on a boat for $30 and infesting my property, right? I mean, who knows the mindset? But my point is the place that got torched is where the ferry to Lahaina, from Lahaina to Lanai is. Now, for many years, there were development plans that had failed because the people in Lahaina, the place that got torched, they wouldn't sell their properties. They didn't want to sell. Why would you? You know, you got a low tax property tax bill on a house that's on the beach that your great grandma had, and you know you got family that comes out and visits you, and you have a little business where you pay your taxes, you leave people alone, you make nice little souvenirs or give them a good meal or, you know, a stiff drink and send them on their way with good memories. And you're minding your business, being a good, productive member of society, and all of a sudden it's the towering inferno coming down on you, something straight out of the pit of hell, incinerating everything in its path. Now, the excuse was that there was a hurricane in the vicinity that was fueling very powerful winds. Now, the winds that day were close to 30 miles an hour. Those aren't powerful winds. Those are strong winds. But when you have the type of surgically precise destruction, and when you have the proximity to a destination of the elite, I mean, the island 9.1 miles off the coast of Lahaina is a place where Bill Gates got married to Melinda Gates on the golf course. I mean, this island called Lanai is not Skid Row, folks. This is not the south side of Chicago. You know, this is these so-called elites want to make it into their utopia, right? I mean, they're not hiding how they want to make the island of Lanai a health and wellness mecca for the elite, right? Well, the only problem is 9 miles across the water, you've got people that could swim that with a set of fins and some goggles, or, you know, cross that with a piece of junk boat and a couple gallons of gasoline. And your tropical paradise could get it obviously affected by the visitors, right? Now, I don't know about you, but I think it's really odd that the part of Maui that caught on fire was the part that is the closest distance between 2 points from Lahaina to Lanai. And I also find it odd, some of the comments coming out of the governor's mouth, Governor Green, after this tragedy, this act of war on the Hawaiian people. They haven't even accounted for 1,000 people that are still missing, and he's talking about, he's wondering what they're going to rebuild. You know, he's already looking forward to, building out the graveyard. There were people that were burned alive next to their children and their pets and their homes and their cars. And we're told by eyewitness accounts that the water was turned off, that the emergency alert network didn't notify people to evacuate. And now we're told that this is caused by climate change. You know, this is really disgusting, ladies and gentlemen. When you think about how the words of someone like Rahm Emanuel resonate to this day, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? There's all these books coming out as a result of this about climate change and how we can stop these kind of things from happening in the future. The fires that take place with such surgical precision, I believe, are caused by two distinct factors. And by the way, they refused to shut off the electricity during this event. That's kind of telling. And we have eyewitness accounts of the water being turned off. Why would anyone shut the water off? I don't want to hear this nonsense about how they were conserving the water for the firefighting efforts. There were no firefighting efforts. Do you see any footage of anybody trying to put these fires out? No, they're there to put out the smoldering ashes after the place got destroyed. So, it's very concerning to me that we have a cast of characters that have been supplanted from the mainland. I think Governor Green was involved with the Department of Human Services in Washington. I'm not clear on his background. I haven't really researched him very much, other than his behavior and facial expressions before this event took place, rather recently. He looked very nervous. And then his behavior after and during this, they're not showing too much of his presence. But what scares me the most about this is how people do not understand how lasers can be used to ignite things, and appliances can be exploded by surging the electricity for the smart meters. I've done videos on the refrigerators and the air conditioners in the cars, in the homes, in the buses, in the hotels, in the condos, in the apartments, in the restaurants, in the kitchens, that use flammable refrigerants because of the so-called ozone hole from the supposed Nobel Prize winning research of Dr. Francis Sherry Rowland and his sidekick, Dr. Molina, who, by the way, when I had my physical chemistry class in the physical science building at the University of California, Irvine, and I had to go to my lab, do you know I was one doorknob away from those atmospheric chemists' lab? Isn't that the irony? I remember seeing their laboratory every time I went into mine. And they're the ones that said we have to get rid of the Freon because it's causing the ozone to deplete. So they've replaced all of the propellants, the refrigerants, in these refrigeration devices like, refrigerators, freezers, car air conditioning, home air conditioning, dehumidifiers, with flammable gas. I think isobutane or pentane. These are highly flammable, explosive gases, and they compress them with a compressor, an electronic device that highly pressurizes it, and then allows it to expand. And that expansion and compression process dissipates heat and creates a very cold part of a mechanism that a fan can blow air over and then transport the cold air to a refrigerator or a freezer or a room. And now we have something called a smart meter that's literally remote controllable, that has been placed on every home and business, while people have installed literal bombs in their homes, offices, and businesses and cars. And most of the appliances now have Wi-Fi connectivity connected to a smart meter. I went to a high school many years ago, and I was one of those students that, I had taken calculus. Let me see how this went. It was Algebra 1 and Geometry my first year, Algebra 2 my sophomore year, I think Calculus my junior year, and Math Analysis my senior year, if I'm not mistaken. And I was in this little calculus club, and I was kind of one of those. I wasn't a jock in high school, let's put it that way. But I hung out and had lunch with, a lot of really, bright people. Those were the people in my classes. One of them I remember, really smart guy, and I think he was going to go to MIT when he graduated. never really kept up in touch with these people. But you know, down the road, I remember somebody, you know, I said, hey, I wonder what happened to so and so. He said, oh yeah, he's working on lasers. Like, really? Yeah, he's like working on lasers for the military. Like, oh. I started looking into the lasers and the application of some of these lasers. And one of the weaponry systems was the 60 gigahertz laser as a directed energy weapon. Now, gigahertz happens to be the absorption spectrum of oxygen. I've talked about this, how that the 5G systems are going to use these 60 gigahertz systems. The Wi-Fi systems are going to be installing the 60 gigahertz transmission systems. But back in the mid-'80s, they were developing directed energy weapon systems using a 60 gigahertz laser, which is totally invisible, that can literally blow a plane out of the sky. Now, conversely, an aircraft or a drone equipped with such a laser can also ignite and destroy targets on the ground. And if simultaneously the smart meters are surging the flammable appliances to explode them, and then you time it with a wind event that is either induced or expected, and compound that by shutting off the water, well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is a perfect storm from the pit of hell. The people that have acquired all this wealth, these obscene amounts of wealth, there's nothing wrong with being wealthy. The problem is what happens to people who are overcome by it, and their absolute hatred of the normal people like you and I, to the point that they want us dead. And, you know, it's not a mystery when you hear people like, you know, Prince Philip, talking about how if I was able to come back from the dead, I'd come back as a killer virus to eliminate 98% of the people in the world. You know, Bill Gates is always pushing vaccines and talks about how, you know, the mosquitoes are his favorite insect or favorite animal. When you look at the plans of the people that like to have their way with us, and they don't even hide the fact that that's their intention, there are a group of people that want all of us dead. Now, is it out of the realm of possibility that if they want to confiscate an area or region because they have plans for it, that they'll do whatever they can to get it? Well, of course, they'll first try to pay for it and buy it. And if you're not willing to sell, they'll try to use something like eminent domain or declare it a public nuisance or condemn it. And if that doesn't work, they'll try to scare you and threaten you. And, I guess if you get together with all your neighbors like in Lahaina and come on a unified front and say, we're not going to sell, and we're not going to sell to the developers, then they just hit it with laser beams and surge the smart appliances and blow the place and burn the place to the ground. That's what happened over there, folks. That's what I think. I'm sorry. But you know why I'm doing this video? Because this is coming to a city or a town near you. You know, last night, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I was sound asleep, and I was awoken by a flash of light, a bright flash of light. And I was sound asleep, and the flash of light through my eyelids woke me up. And I immediately thought, what is this? A phosphorus grenade in my backyard? And then within about 2 seconds to 3 seconds, I heard this big thunderstorm begin to erupt. I told my wife last night at dinner time, I said, honey, it looks like it's going to rain. We've got this tropical moisture moving in. I said, I can feel it in my knee. I always have these anomalies when the barometric pressure is about to change drastically. But I can feel the weather events coming in some of my joints, as so can many of you. But last night at about 4 o'clock in the morning, when I was awakened by this event, the flash of lightning and the burst of thunder, a loud burst, what ended up coming after that was nothing but wind and no rain. And the wind lasted for, I don't know, about maybe 10 minutes, right? And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? We have thunder and lightning and no rain. And I started thinking to myself, uh-oh, are they about to hit us with a directed energy weapon and use the wind as the catalyst to spread the burn pattern? My point is it was freaky, unnatural weather. And it doesn't take much, like if you're living in like Idaho or some of these places in, that part of the country, for a derecho to come through and rip the roofs off all your houses. If they want, look, folks, they can run an earthquake machine here in Southern California. They can run a tornado machine in Tennessee. They can steer the hurricanes. Look what they did during Hurricane Katrina. Do you remember that? Do you remember why the gangsters in the lower wards of the area of Louisiana that was being affected by Hurricane Katrina? Did you ever wonder why the residents were shooting the helicopters? Because the helicopters were blowing up the levees to cause the flooding. And the residents were shooting at the helicopters. Okay. So this is not the first time they've destroyed a region with weather or fire, because what the oil companies could never get accomplished through years of negotiation and political wrangling with environmental protections and controls for that region, the area of Louisiana that was devastated by Hurricane Katrina was set for oil and gas exploration, and they could never environmentally get it through. So they just, they ran a hurricane through it, blew the levees out, flooded and destroyed everything. So everything's a mess anyway, might as well drill. The same thing happened in the Bahamas. It's amazing how the hurricanes leave the hotels alone and wipe out the villages, right? And then it's amazing how, like, the same thing happened in Puerto Rico. Look, folks, my point is these guys, you're next. If you're sitting on something they want, or if you're in the way of a project that they got their eyes on, you're next. We're all next, folks. Let me tell you what we need to do, all right? I can handle the sun. I'll just leave it at this. Let me tell you what needs to be done, folks. I don't care where you live. I don't care if you live in a high-rise apartment. I don't care if you live on a ranch in Texas. I don't care if you're in the Okefenokee Swamp. I don't care if you're down on the bayou. You better have something to either escape or fight back with, all right? Now, where I live in Southern California, I can't stop an earthquake machine, but I can certainly withstand one with having enough supplies stored up and water, etc. And if you live in an area in the forest and you have a pond, you better get a gasoline-powered pump. If you live in the foothills and you've got a swimming pool, you better get one of those portable firefighting pumps. They're a couple $100. And I think everything that you have lived for and worked for is worth a couple $100. You know, people spend more money on their stupid televisions than they could get away with spending on firefighting equipment that could save their entire community. I want to reiterate what happened in Maui. I believe directed energy weapons were used to ignite a specific area, and it was timed with a wind event that is either well forecast in advance or controlled and contrived and created to coincide with the deployment of these directed energy weapons. At the same time, you have ignition through the use of the smart meters surging the smart appliances that have flammable refrigerants in them. That's what I think happened, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason I think they did it is those people wouldn't budge, they wouldn't move, they wouldn't sell, they wouldn't develop. And I want you to look and do your homework on the island 9.1 miles off the coast called Lanai. And I want you to look at the ferry from Lahaina. The Lahaina ferry spot is the closest spot to that island. And for $30 each, you could get on a boat, and within an hour, you could be out there on this private island that is owned by a billionaire. I think this guy is worth $100 billion. That's what they say. And so he spent, $500 million buying 98% of this island. He couldn't get the whole thing because I think 2% of it's public property, and it's not for sale. But what is for sale are all the local government agents and all of the alphabet agencies, and I'm sure those are all under wraps everywhere you go with these really wealthy elite people. But my point is that they're not talking about this island across from it, and they're not showing the pictures of how this private island literally just totally eclipses the town when you look out the window. And every single one of these things, every single one of these pictures is not showing the island of Lanai. It just shows the charred remains, and then we hear the sob stories, which are truly horrific. But then we hear about, these supposed movie stars that are sending boxes of Cheetos over there. Ladies and gentlemen, we have people among us in your local town councils, on your local board of supervisors, in your House or your Senate office of your state capital, in your congressional office at the federal level or your House of Representatives, that are working for people that are doing everything in their power to undermine everything you and I live for, work for, pray for, and our forefathers died for. And many people are asleep at the switch. You cannot fall for the propaganda, folks. You cannot sit here and think climate change caused this. Climate change did not turn the water off. Climate change did not cause a surgical burn pattern to erupt in a circle around Lahaina. Climate change did not start this fire. And I can tell you right now, if we don't do something about this fraud with climate change and these criminals that are wrapping themselves in the flag and posing as our saviors as they allegedly come to our rescue with a box of Twinkies and a FEMA card to go live in a trailer for a couple of days after they just stole your grandmother's plantation from you, then we're all in trouble if we don't wake up to what's happening. Anywhere you live in this country, you are at risk of being attacked by these monsters with natural disasters that are planned well in advance, carefully crafted and thought out, or even these terrorist events. If you live in some sort of high-rise building, you better have some sort of rope ladder to get the heck out of that thing. If the thing catches on fire and the elevators don't work and the staircase doors are locked. Like on 9/11, the first responders Their radios were all jammed. Here we are, 20-something years later, and here we go again. They shut the water off, and the emergency alert network doesn't work. And you got 1,000 people missing, and the governor's talking about wondering what he's going to do to rebuild. We haven't even buried the dead, ladies and gentlemen. And these people are already talking about the bulldozers and the builder man, right? I want all of you to realize two things at the close of this broadcast. That number one, life is precious. Tomorrow is promised to no man or no woman. That Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and that we should live our lives in light of the fact that today could be our last day, and that we should do everything we can to expose evil and injustice and fight for those who don't have a voice and who don't have the strength. And we need to come together and start being objective and calling out the fraud. And when we see something like this that's a total rig job, to demand answers and not let them get away with this, because if they think we're all collectively that stupid and that powerless and that cowardly, they'll keep doing it, folks. They want you, fighting over, these political footballs and this Democrat and Republican garbage and, the conservative and liberal and all this nonsense. Let me tell you something, folks. There's only two sides to this war, good and evil. We all have a right to live and be left the heck alone. And we all have a duty to be our brother's keeper, okay? I urge all of you to do what you can to make sure this doesn't happen in your community, in your neck of the literal forest that they could spray chaff on and ignite next week. You've got to come up with something. You need to come together. If you live in an area that's got a water, get some portable firefighting equipment. If you live in an earthquake-prone area, make sure you have ample supplies. Make sure you have weapons and storable food and things to protect your family and your neighborhood. Power generating sources. And if you don't have a lot of money and you're tapped, guess what? You could still have extra food and you could still have extra blankets and you could be there for someone when they don't even have that, folks. This is not about spending a whole bunch of money on stuff. This is about stopping the advance of this evil genocide and these wicked plans to terraform the world and put us into these compact prisons so they can exterminate us and take us off our land and put us into an untenable situation where we're powerless. We still have the rights and the ability and the voice to do what I just said. And collectively, we have to. It is incumbent upon all of us, while the window is open, to tell the truth and to warn others about what lies ahead. I don't know what else I could say, except that in Jesus' name, may the people be comforted that have suffered and endured this tragic loss. And I think that one of the beautiful things about being a follower of the way, someone who's been born again, who's been guaranteed eternal life, is that we're not afraid to die. And we know where our loved ones go that have been redeemed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a sad topic. I had to broach it. We had to discuss it. That's it. That's all I got to say, folks. I want you all to take care. And for the 1,000 of you that are in this stream right now, get the likes up, get the thumbs up. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Take care. God bless.